Ron here with your forecast for the week of March 31st, 2025. This really takes us into April. And after March Madness, I think April will have a little bit of a different feel to it. There's a lot less stuff happening in April than there was, well, really for the for the first 3 months of this year. Um, this is Mars' last week out of bounds. By next week, he's going to get back in bounds, and hopefully that's going to settle things down just a little bit. Mercury is having his last week of retrograde. He'll turn direct again on April 7th. That's next Monday. And Venus, well, Venus still has some time to go in her retrograde. The eclipses, technically, we're still a little elevated in eclipse season, but we're not where we were a couple of weeks ago. It's sort of settling down a little bit. Does that mean that nothing's going to happen? Does that mean that things are going to even out and settle down here on the terrestrial plane if things are not quite so cooking on the celestial level? And the answer comes back, no, not really. It's kind of like you have a raucous party going on. And the fact that no new guests are arriving doesn't really mean that things are going to calm down all that much. We've already got so much stuff on the table that we can't really expect that things are going to like somehow or another normalize or anything like that. There are some indications even that things will get a little bit more out of control on the terrestrial level. If you take a trip over to the Medium channel, Adam Bernstein had a really good forecast that I thought was pretty interesting. And his stuff is always interesting. You might want to check him out. And he's feeling that April is a real big turning point. And it often is, particularly in the US, is an interesting thing about the US. The third week in April tends to be a very stressful week. It comes right after tax day, right on April 15th, in the middle of April. The following week seems to have a lot of stresses associated with it for the US. That was an insight that came not from any astrologer or psychic or anything like that. I picked that up watching somebody on a news channel one day, and they're like, oh, this tends to be a bad week for the US. So it may not be a bad week for the US, but it probably will not be a particularly calm week. Oh, well, but we're talking about this week. And this week we have some stuff going on. We're waxing away from the eclipse on Saturday, March 29th. We're having our first week of Neptune in Aries, and I hope that you go watch the Neptune in Aries video. You probably have, and welcome to the new subscribers. Let's see, I picked up quite a few subscribers from that, and I appreciate that very, very much. But this is the test time. This is when we get to see what happens when Neptune goes into Aries. Keep an eye out for things having to do with stuff like sports competition. It's a good week for the first week of Major League Baseball starting. Sports competitions, military things, and sex. And let's see what happens with each of those things over the course of this week, as Neptune is liable to give us a little hint of what's going to happen. Again, we're not necessarily looking for events, we're looking more towards attitude towards events. That's what Neptune sort of shows us, at least initially. So what's the discussion around these things rather than what actually happens? Well, undoubtedly stuff will happen too. So that's kind of the excitement. We're waxing away from the eclipse, so we're building towards the full moon, but that comes in 2 weeks. We're actually this week will only get us as far as the first quarter moon. It's an active phase. Now, there's not a lot of stuff happening at the beginning of the week. It's not an especially active beginning to the week other than all the things that are actually going on, or not actually going on, all the things that are already going on. So we can't really say that there's any big hot aspects at the beginning of the week. That's all right. we don't really need any hot aspects. It's very much a beginning time where we're sort of thinking about what we want to do, where we want to go. It's a good time to maybe do a little bit of research into something that you want to initiate or begin. Now, I didn't make a big thing out of this last week because the new moon eclipse in Aries, it's really not a good time for like intention setting or anything like that. The new moon in Aries, which is the beginning of the lunar cycle that comes at the beginning of the solar year, the astrological solar year, which begins on the equinox. It's kind of like the real beginning of the year, right? Now we've got both the waxing of the solar cycle and then the waxing of the lunar cycle. But because it was an eclipse, not necessarily a great time to do much more than just sort of sit back and meditate. And some of you will be watching this actually on the day of the eclipse. Just a time to step back, not a time to initiate a lot of stuff. Just kind of go with the flow, see what comes up, see what comes up. And that I would say that goes through Sunday and Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, you start thinking about maybe where do you want to put your efforts? Like now, those of us in the northern hemisphere, we're in springtime. We start to feel the energy is really returning. Mars is out of bounds, but he's direct. And the Venus and the Mercury retrogrades, well, they are slowing us down in practical ways, but you know, we still feel that we want to go forward. We still feel that it's time to get some stuff done. And now this week, like around, midweek is a good time to start thinking, well, what do I want to do in 2025? I think we've been kind of battered by all of the changes that are happening in the collective, and that kind of makes you feel like you got to be on hold for your life and what you want to do. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and when there's uncertainty, it's not a great time to initiate things, right? Because you think, well, I'm going to put my eggs in this basket, and then you find out that, that basket's going away. We're getting near Easter time, huh? Oh, eggs, given the price of eggs. Um, Not perhaps not a good analogy. Maybe it's not the basket that's going away. Maybe it's the eggs that are going away. Well, I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out with the eggs and all that. The thing is, there's a lot of uncertainty, and that makes us sort of pull back and withdraw a little bit in terms of our personal lives. And yet the energy of this week is starting to show us that maybe that's not going to last forever. Or maybe there's some things that have to get done anyway. Maybe this is just a time when we're going to initiate, where some things have to begin. So we don't really need to do much more than kind of consider what those things might be. That's, where would you like to put your effort? Where would you like things to go this year? That's enough for the beginning part of the week. As we get towards, let's say, Thursday, Friday, we have a series of aspects that are actually quite constructive. We have nice connections between Mars, still out of bounds, Saturn, Uranus. They're all kind of. Now, remember a few weeks ago, I digress. Maybe you don't remember if you're a new viewer, but a few weeks ago, I was saying everything that happens seems to be happening at 23 degrees. In fact, the upcoming full moon is another 23 degrees thing. Now things are shifting over to 24 degrees. And we have a lot of aspects at 24, eventually 25 degrees. Very, very latent signs. Very, very latent signs. Pretty much everybody who is born towards the end of a sign, the last few days of a sign, the last week of a sign, is picking up on this energy a little bit more strongly than the rest of us. Of course, most of us have stuff someplace out around the end of a sign, and it's going to continue to be a hot area for a while. Anyways, this nice connections that we have between Mars and Saturn and Uranus, and we also have We also have coming up a nice aspect. This is next Sunday between the Sun and Jupiter, which is bound to be a very positive kind of aspect. And we have a nice aspect early. Well, that's again on Friday between the Sun and Pallas Athene. All of these aspects in general, and we'll say they're in place Thursday through Sunday, are just kind of helping us to get things moving, helping us to get things going. The Sun Jupiter aspect, which will be a big part of the weekend. Now we have a waxing moon, Mars still out of bounds, a waxing moon, and the Sun in a nice aspect to Jupiter. Well, what's that going to do? The Sun Jupiter aspects give us a bit of it's a little bit of faith in ourselves. It's a bit of a sense that we can do things. It's a bit of a sense that, maybe the future will be brighter. And then the Mars, Saturn, Uranus stuff, it's sort of like saying we can find new ways to do things. There are new avenues opening up to us. So there's a kind of combination of optimism and opportunity. You can have optimism without opportunity. You could have opportunities and not have much optimism. We have both. We have both this week. Watch out, particularly I think Thursday or Friday, with the Sun sextile to Pallas Athene. Look for some important news coming from a prominent woman in politics or well, probably politics. Anyway, if there's that happens all the time though, so it'd be a little hard to pick it out. Well, maybe something will happen. If it does, I'll mention it. If I see it, I'll mention it. But again, early part of the week, we're looking at it as being where do I want to go? And then the latter part of the week into the weekend should be fun. Nice fun, waxing moon, Sun, Jupiter, that's good stuff. And then there's opportunities, optimism plus opportunity. And now, of course, this is going to get everybody. Everybody's going to feel that. If if you feel it, that's great. If some jerk feels it, well, then we're going to have to deal with some jerk who's full of optimism and sees opportunities places. So it's not like it's not going to have any contention or anything like that. Everything is going to be wonderful. But rather, if you look at your little slice of the pie and say, okay, this is what I want to do, these are the opportunities to do it, it should work out pretty well. I have to say that on the weekend, we're also looking towards Mercury's station early Monday. So mercurial mishaps are going to multiply, I'd say Saturday, Sunday, then going into Monday the 7th. Also, Venus, retrograde Venus, is going to meet with Saturn on Monday the 7th, early in the morning. And so we're going to be feeling that aspect very much on Sunday. Less so Saturday, I think, but very much so on Sunday. And that's a kind of that's a little bit more serious. And what I would say about that is relationship issues or business issues that came up in February are likely to be revisited right now. Venus is going to station very, very close to Saturn. I'll talk more about this during the week, but as we get into the weekend, you might start, relationship, business, financial issues, issues with valuables. They can kind of be brought to light, a little bit more prominence about them, and a little bit more serious thinking about them. The end result, that's down the line. So with any of those issues began in February. Here comes the second installment. We're not at the end of the story yet. We're not going to find out what the end of the story is. We're just getting the second installment. Venus is retrograde. There's a little caution around any Venusian issues like relationships and finances and valuables. Still not a great time for luxury items. It's still, we're still in that kind of backing away from pleasure. Even if it's a fun weekend, we're still kind of in that backing away from excess, moderation of things. It's that kind of an energy. We're not quite ready to go flying just yet. We're moving in the right direction. We feel we can do it, but we're not quite there to like, the lights are all green ahead. They're starting to turn little bit by little bit. We got some energy going. It's not quite the drag that we've had on our personal lives the last month or so. It's letting up. We feel a little bit better, but we're not, racing ahead at top speed yet. All right, you get the idea. See you next week.